This is the Business Owners IT Podcast with Anthony Gerasch and Ryan Carter, where tomorrow's technology meets today's conversations.
Hi, I'm Tony Gerasch.
And I'm Ryan Carter, and this is the Business Owners IT Podcast.
A podcast where we discuss tips, tricks, and solutions for business owners involving all things tech.
So, Tony, you started this business when Al Gore invented the internet, right?
Yeah, a long time ago.
What does that even mean?
Well, I mean,
to the young guys that don't know.
Yeah. So I always tell people that, right? You know, I started my business as a programmer. My first customer was Caterpillar. We programmed through the year 2000. And then about 2003, Al Gore invented the internet. He really didn't invent the internet. Actually, the internet's been around a long time.
But he definitely told people.
Yeah, but he told them, or somehow it was, you know, it's not true, but it's one of those things that went around the media where he said that he invented the internet. I don't know if he did or not, but who cares? But, you know, back then, you know, when I first started, right, I still have my original AOL account. So it was dial-up. I mean, I used dial-up to, I actually used AOL dial-up to get into my servers back then.
Oh, yeah?
RAS server. And it's still, RAS is still available on the, you know, back then it would have been Windows NT, right? So Windows NT came out and it had a RAS server. RAS server is remote access server.
So this guy first got a disk in the mail from AOL.
Yeah.
You know, and put it in his computer.
Yes.
Set up an account, and then sitting there going, man, how could I get into my servers at the office? And he's like, oh, I could use this dial-up modem at 14.4, right?
Yeah, it was 14.4. I probably still got the modem. You guys probably just threw the modem out.
I think I just threw that away.
But basically, so back then, we're going way back now. So back then, you know, AOL had the largest dial-in server banks or dial-in places of anywhere. I mean, they were nationwide.
Yeah, you
right?
could get a local number to call.
Yeah, you used to have to pay, right? There was cell phones. You used to have to pay, right? So you'd pay long distance calling, right? No big deal. I got an 800 number, but so you know it wasn't a big deal because it is true. I would use we had a couple different ways to do it, but we first started out was we would use AOL and I would call and I had some software and it would actually ring my modem at my office and then we'd have RAS and we would do it actually through John,
you got to add modem sounds. You got to put modem sounds in here.
So, you know, basically we gained access, but I also had some internet back then too. Now I'm thinking back, it's been so long ago. I actually had a dial up, or I had internet. I had internet access and I had I think it was an IBM 8235 or some weird device that was actually plugged in to a either an ISDN or a DSL because I was one of the first adopters. But regardless, we used AOL to get remote access.
Yep, okay.
And then later on, you know, as things grew, I mean, I've had a checkpoint firewall since, you know, the early 2000s.
You got books that are this thick on how to program those checkpoint firewalls.
Yeah. So that's
every time someone from Checkpoint comes to the office, he brings it out and boom, right on the desk goes, look at how long I've been doing with your company.
Yes, it's been a long time. So, and man, have things evolved, right?
Just a little bit.
You know what I'm saying?
You still got that ISDN connection?
No.
DSL?
Right. And I also had at one point I had a point-to-point to Caterpillar in Peoria with an ISDN backup.
Okay.
Because we were doing programming through the year 2000 and we needed to always be connected to them so we could program because, you know, back then the world was coming to an end.
And those weren't cheap.
You know, yeah, they weren't. Nothing was cheap. But yeah, I mean, things have evolved, right? You know, back then they weren't called Ethernet switches, they were called hubs.
Yeah, they didn't do what they did.
Yeah, and they were only 10 megabits per second. So you had a 10 megabit per second hub, and in a hub situation, only one thing can talk at a time. Mm-hmm. So basically, if you had 8 people in a room, you know, only one computer at a time could talk. It still was able to communicate, but only one at a time would be communicating. Mm-hmm. And when I started with Caterpillar, they actually were on Token Ring.
Oh, yeah.
So when I worked there in Caterpillar back then, they had Token Ring for their network. So basically, that's a big ring, and you throw a token out there, and things are grabbing it as, you know, it's happening. So, yeah. And then we got the 10 megabits switch. And then, man, that was hugely fast.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it made a huge
game
difference.
changer.
It was a game changer. And then we went to the 100 megabit switches, and
Then you got routers involved.
routers, right? We had routers, and that's when Cisco was making their name. Very, very expensive, but everybody wanted it.
And then people learned how to hack and started hacking computers.
Yeah, then you got gigabit
viruses.
switches, right? Now you got 10 gig switches.
Yeah.
And fibers.
Yeah. Yep, a lot of fiber connections, 10 gig switches, firewalls on the edge.
Yep.
We're starting to hear talk of getting rid of firewalls. I'm not a big fan. I've got a few clients, that still use their Comcast modem on the edge.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah.
The reason, and we can go into that, right? The reason you don't want to use your Comcast modem as your firewall is because, so let's say this is the biggest thing that happen. Let's say you have some cameras, and let's say you have some printers, and I don't know, let's say you got some things in the corner that make sound in your office, and who knows, you might have a smart coffee pot that you plug in the wrong spot.
Yeah, it happens.
We will mention who plugged this coffee pot in the wrong spot. But anyways, then what happens is Comcast comes out and they change the modem, and then nothing works. All of a sudden, your printer has a new IP address. Your devices your cameras, you can't get to them because they all have new IP addresses, or the IP address changed, or the subnet, how they talk changed, and it just becomes a cluster. So what you need to do is have a firewall or a router, a firewall. You need a firewall in between your Comcast, your public internet, and your business network.
Yeah, so what you're saying is it's not actually just, it does all the firewall-y things, the blocking and all that, but it also saves you from a Comcast reset, or something that resets the modem,
Absolutely.
Or they call you and say, we get you better speed. This guy will be out Monday to swap out the modem, and you don't let your MSP know, and the modem gets swapped, and now everything's done. No printers are working and all this, and the Comcast guy just says, oh, I put the modem in, it works, see ya.
Yeah, and then also, it just becomes your network is going to be very unstable if you don't have some, and it's called a firewall for a reason. It also stops people coming in, it logs everything, right? You don't have, if something in your network, so if for some reason somebody was in your network, right, and you're just on a Comcast modem, every time they reboot that modem, you lose all your logs. So, I can get in there, hack you, do all these things that I was doing, and just say, okay, start restarting everything, and all that forensic stuff is gone.
Yep, gone. Yeah.
Whereas when you have a firewall, right, it's recording all that stuff. It can see where they go. I mean, it gives you how to look, and gives you information logging.
Yeah, and on our network, this kind of what made me talk about this is that we put, we have a firewall on the edge, but we also put a switch in front of that, which would give us that public internet to some of our connections. Mm-hmm. And what we found is that public internet, because of the way we were doing the connections, was leaking into our private internet, and that was causing a massive outage. I mean, it was like every few hours we'd go down. It was because of what they call a broadcast storm, and it was just broadcasting way too much traffic because that Comcast modem was just blaring it out, and it would slow down our network to a crawl, and to the point it wouldn't work. So, that was a problem that we saw that I'm glad we resolved, and where you got our firewall now on the edge again. Yeah,
I mean, so, and also, I mean, it's...
But the thing about it is that used to work.
Yeah, it always worked, right? So that sometimes things too. It could have been faulty hardware that was causing the problem too, but was reporting back wrong. Who knows, right? Mm-hmm. But I mean, it was always working for years. It worked, and then all of a sudden, it just stops working. I mean, that's what sometimes happens. Like you could have a perfect network, right? And it works great for years, and then all of a sudden, it just something happens and it stops working the way it has.
Yep.
And, we've seen it where people have plugged things back in or turned servers on that were never really decommissioned. That's a big one, right? Where you have a server that was never really decommissioned. It was unplugged. Or it wasn't unplugged. It was just shut off. But, IT guys never cleaned up after themselves, and they had a storm and everything went down. Everything shut down. They just go in and turn everything on.
Yeah. Yep. Or another one too is that the network equipment is the number one thing to be forgotten about. It gets plugged in and works in a closet, and you forget about that little switch in the closet. That thing dies and takes everything down.
Yep.
Or you got an overambitious IT guy that decides to install something on the network, like they think it's a router, but it's actually something else, and it's giving out IP addresses and slows everything down to a crawl, and it dies, and nothing works, and I can't figure out why. And I'm spending a few hours. I call Tony. He's like, I can fix this in 2 minutes. He does. And I'm walking around unplugging stuff.
Yeah. Well, again, also when a network does go down, right? I mean, it can be pretty, when something happens, it can be pretty stressful where you don't think straight, right? Because now you got 100 people that can't work, right? They all have deadlines. You're working on something else, right? So, yeah, which comes into mapping out the networks too. I mean, you should actually be drawing out your networks and have some network documentation.
Yeah, that's
so
very important for
when
the hygiene.
when something goes south, you can recover.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect way to say it. That network hygiene that you need is you need a network drawing. Yeah. You need to make sure where your equipment is, and you got to make sure it's kind of up, it's updated, ready to rock. And if there's a problem, it's easier to solve. And another part of that hygiene too, is we've talked about it in other podcasts, is separating your networks. Your guest network from your private network, or a public network from your private. Make sure they're not on the same what we call a VLAN. Make sure it's separated and that traffic is blocked.
Yeah, I mean, wireless is another thing. Back in 1997, 1998, we didn't have wireless. We only had wired.
No, right.
So, and Cat 5 was the standard back then.
When did you start going with wireless? Like people started talking about it.
Well, I think we started out with WEP, right? So, Netgear and some of those places, some of those Linksys and that started to come out with equipment that we would use. And then
WP got hacked quickly.
Yeah, it got hacked pretty quickly, and then we moved on then to to what we use today, Ubiquities, and we used to use some Netgear. Like early on, we had a lot of Netgear wireless out there with antennas that you could mount in the ceiling, and
Yeah, and so when you're thinking wireless now, I mean, it's good. It's really good. It's solid. It's strong. Solid, yeah. So I mean, would you suggest going all wireless at an office? How come?
No, I would never suggest. No, it's just too many. It's too easy for failure. I mean, it's easier if you're hardwired in. I mean, if anything can happen. I mean, it's just a two-way. It's just an FM radio station. If you remember back in the day, it can get interference, and then all of a sudden you're on a Teams meeting and you don't know why, but
Yeah, so that hardwire back end is important, especially if you're using an important computer.
Yeah.
Wireless is great though, to be able to pick up and walk from conference room to conference room and use it, but the reliability of it is still, just like Tony said, I mean, it's wireless. It could be interfered with.
Yeah, it's a good example is when I was in Key West, in my RV, I now have Starlink, right? And I have the antenna on the roof and it's pointing up and I got a beautiful thing, but I was near an Air Force base. Or Navy base, I think a Navy base is a Navy base, and every time an aircraft flew over the top of it, the fighter jets and the things that were coming out, I lose my connection.
Oh, it was great. I'd be in a meeting with them.
I could hear him coming.
I hear a jet. Hold on, here comes a jet.
They must have been jamming the signal as they flew over because I was fine if the airplanes, the civilian airplanes, were coming out of the airport and flying over the top. I didn't lose it. It was only the military aircraft.
Oh, you got another hour? We go tinfoil hat if you want.
Yeah,
all about that.
Yeah. So it was something.
Yeah, it was. It was
funny because you keep getting dropped, right?
Yeah.
Had I been hardwired in, I probably would have been fine if I could.
Yep. You're like, here it comes an airplane, and then I would just wait a few seconds and then we could talk again. Yep. Or I'd just talk to the other person in the meeting while you were out of it.
Yeah.
Yep. So that was kind of
fun. But otherwise, it worked flawlessly.
It was. I use it at home, and Starlink is good. Yeah. I mean, we were talking about earlier, I could only get DSL at home because I'm out in the country. So I've had no great luck with it. So if anyone's looking into Starlink and wants some suggestions too, go ahead and drop a comment in. We could tell you, his suggestions on how well it works, and we can talk about it. I'm not sure on the business side using it. We've got some people,
starting to play with it.
Yeah, starting to play with it, but I'm not 100% on that, but I've been sold other ways, so here we go.
I can tell you that we drove down to, my wife usually drives my RV, and we drove down to Florida with Starlink mounted on the roof of the RV, and I was able to work flawlessly all the way there.
Yeah, and before we let you go, so this guy must not get car sick because he's working and in a moving vehicle. It's hard for me to do. I have to take, motion sickness pills. But he's on his camera talking to me, and it's going like this. And I'm getting motion sickness while he's writing, and I'm sitting at my desk.
Turn off your camera.
Yeah, I go, can you turn your camera? Why? And I'm like, it's bouncing everywhere.
Yeah. I got to tell you, too, there's another funny thing that happened. I was doing something, right? and I wasn't paying attention. My wife's driving, right? And she pulls into Bucky's and she gets underneath the thing, and I lost everything. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I can't do it. What are you doing? I lost everything. She pulled underneath there to get gas, and that was it. Everything gone.
And they never left. They pulled into a Bucky's and never left because that place is a zoo.
Oh, that place is remarkable.
Take us on out.
Yes. All right, everybody. That was fun. Thanks for tuning into the Business Owners IT podcast. We hope to see you next week.
Yep. We'll see you next week where we talk about, we'll let you know.
We'll let you know. We got to come up with some more topics.
Unique computing solutions. Your IT challenges solved.